guys, this is Katie Dozier for CardsChat.com, and today I want to talk about this hand that to me was probably the most adrenaline-packed moment of my poker career thus far, at least in a live tournament. This was in the WSOP Main Event, I guess not surprisingly, given that that is perhaps the most adrenaline-packed tournament in the history of poker tournaments, at least in my experience. And this particular hand was at a table that was a bit intense. It was day 3 and it was a table full of regs or quasi-regs and very aggressive players, and particularly villain in this hand was definitely an aggressive player. We've been playing together for around 3 hours, and I think that this guy definitely thought I wasn't a nit. Maybe he did think I was a nit, but I really think he thought I wasn't. I 3-bet him twice before this particular hand, in which I, spoiler alert, also end up 3-betting him. So the situation is this: he opens UTG, and I look down at 2 black aces, which is, I think a lot of people would agree, the prettiest hand in poker. And we started this hand about 65 blinds deep. It folds back to him, at which point he pretends at least to think for a second and then does toss in the call. I definitely sized my 3-bet, balancing it to be a bit under 3, because that was the sizing, a bit under 3x, the sizing that I'd done with him before when I hadn't had 2 black aces, spoiler alert. So the flop comes out Queen 8-7, and it has 2 diamonds. Now, of course, I don't have a diamond, but this is relevant in so much as I think that this player definitely likes to play draws aggressively, as with everything else. If you looked at him, you would have felt that from the very beginning too. He was wearing like those Top Gun aviator type sunglasses, and then he had so many patches all over him that he looked more like a race car driver, I think, almost than a poker player. So not a casual look this guy was sporting. So he checks to me on that Queen 8-7 2 diamond flops, and I go ahead and c-bet, and he check raises pretty fast also. He'd been timing his actions, you know, as spaced around 10 seconds apart, something that was reasonable, but this time he acted pretty fast. To me, that made me more inclined to think he was on a draw too, just given timing tells and my experience with them. But this may have been something that this guy was aware of. So I thought about his range here, and I thought definitely did include a lot of draws. Of course, it also could include pocket 7s, pocket 8s, the more outside chance of pocket queens, because I think he likely would have gone ahead and 4-bet that given our dynamic pre, but he definitely could have that. 8-7 seemed unlikely to me. He would have raised and then called my 3-bet pre with 8-7 offsuit, but 8-7 suited definitely could be in there. 9-10, particularly 9-10 suited in that particular spot as well. Of course, the outside chance of the 2 pair as well. So I went ahead and thought for a second and realized too that once he's check raised me, the pot is becoming very sizable, and this really is a decision for my stack if I'm going to go ahead and shove myself, or if I'm going to make what I think would constitute somewhat of a hero fold on the flop there with my aces. So instead, I decide that I'm going to be playing this hand. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be talking about it to this day. So I go ahead and shove, and he snaps, which is not, again, what you want to see, and instantly turns over with no hint of a slow roll. Thanks and kudos to him for that. The 8-7 offsuit. So he did flop 2 pair, and I'm not looking great in this moment. I definitely think that the word that applies most is crestfallen. I'm pretty sad and feeling like, wow, maybe I should have thought more about those 65 blinds and overpair. That's a lot of blinds to get in there. And day 3 of the main event, you know, such a lucrative tournament. But before I even have time to keep bashing myself for getting it in or getting frustrated, the dealer is stealing the turn, and it is a beautiful queen on the turn that gives me, of course, the top 2 pair and him the bottom 2 pair. And I don't know even what came on the river. I just know that it was not an 8 or a 7, because I ended up winning that very large pot, at least for my standards, in the WSOP main event on day 3 there. And I also remember too, Gavin Smith was at the table on the other side, and he was drinking his signature Greyhound drink, and he said, "Hey Katie, have you ever had chips in the main before?" Right after I won this hand, and the whole table's kind of, you know, silent and looking at it and figuring out that I've sucked out. And I said no, and he said, "Well, enjoy it." And I definitely took Gavin's advice in that tournament and ended up just having a blast and cashing later on. And there were other hands that happened that maybe should have been more adrenaline fueled, maybe should have been bigger moments, you know, when I was in the money even, but that hand really stood out to me as a turning point. And one of the reasons I love poker is because hands like that happen and are really fun. So I hope you guys have a lot of hands like that, maybe even ones where you didn't have to suck out to win the hand. So thanks to you guys so much for watching. This is Katie Dozier for CardsChat.com.